Welcome to the Water People podcast. I'm Lauren Hill, and my co-host is Dave Rastovich. This episode is presented in partnership with Who Gives a Crap. They deliver recycled TP to your doorstep and donate half of their profits to help build toilets and improve sanitation for those in need. Today, we're in conversation with legendary filmmaker Jack McCoy. Jack has filmed, directed, and produced 25 feature films, from his 1976 debut Tubular Swells to the contrasting narratives of Blue Horizon and the historical themes of A Deeper Shade of Blue. Jack's films have documented shifting surf cultures and bolstered many young men's surfing careers. In his attempt to make art rather than simply document performance, Jack has collaborated with musicians like Paul McCartney, innovated cinematic approaches, and elevated the surf genre for the last 45 years. Our podcast comes to you from the coastal land and waters of both the Bundjalung and Gubbi Gubbi nations. We'd like to acknowledge these traditional custodians and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We'd also like to extend that respect to all First Nations people this podcast ripples out toward.
Jack McCoy is a big personality.
He's a showman, isn't he?
Yeah, he is someone who comes from a different era, really, you know, and anyone who's of our age and younger who's spent time with Jack McCoy creatively or just at the beach by chance one day is impacted in one way or another. You feel something, you know, and some people might be a bit overwhelmed by his big personality and his amazing stories and even just his big voice and his, you know, 6'9" physique or whatever. I don't know. He's a very tall guy, but you know, you feel something. And I think Jack has many, many surf films in his archive of projects and has spanned decades and decades of surfing moments that were pivotal, that changed people's lives, opened up worlds of stoke and adventure and creativity. And he has done that with a sustained level of aloha and stoke and energy that is just impressive, you know, is really something that I have had the privilege of being swept up in a couple of projects and one significant one in my early 20s that was really influential for me. I learnt so much by being with Jack on the road and learning how to follow my gut and my heart, and he and his family teaching me some of that, and a lot to be grateful for my times with Jack. And it's always interesting introducing Jack to new people, or, you know, like when we first got to be together and spend time with Jack, you were like, whoa, that guy's wild. You must have had some times together, you know?
Yeah, I was excited to sit down with you two, just to sit back and kind of observe your dynamic. You know, you can tell he's been someone who's been an elder in your life over the last few decades. So I'm always really interested to see how those dynamics play out. And yeah, Jack always takes the reins in that position. He's very comfortable in that sort of teacher space.
Yeah, and I you know, you speak often about how you've gathered mothers in your life and women who have fulfilled that role in different ways. And I feel the same about dads and uncles. And, you know, I grew up with a pretty extreme and large character of a father as well. And then, you know, getting to spend time with Jack, he for me has and still is a real conduit to a time in surfing that I've always been very in love with, and I really romanticize, which is like the 70s, you know, in surfing, when the sort of corporate and hyper-competitive side of surfing was just starting, but there was a real pushback to that too. There was still a lot of questioning of that. It wasn't hook, line and sinker like it is these days. There was many different threads running through the surfing culture, and Jack was there taking pictures of all of that, observing it and stringing it up with music and emotion, and just to be able to speak directly with someone who was there with the Jerry Lopez's and all the other extreme characters.
I love the way Jack, as someone in his 70s, is still very driven by music, by the way music moves him and inspires him and informs how he makes films. I love that about him. He's always sending us playlists or little USBs full of Paul McCartney's new album or songs that he's been compiling to potentially edit to. And
yeah, such a huge part of his life is music. And I remember the first trip I went on with Jack and a guy who was working for Billabong at the time, Vince Lauder, just here in Australia. We did a road trip and I was in my teenage years and I was listening to Leonard Cohen and Jimi Hendrix and Richie Havens and different stuff. And anyway, we were getting in Jack's four-wheel drive and driving for hours listening to all this music that he loved, but I could sing along to. And he really tripped out that this little 18-year-old surf rat in the late 90s actually knew the words to some of this music from many decades before. And so that really started for us this really cool understanding that, music means a lot in life, and especially to us. And as surfers, as most surfers do, you listen to music on the way to the surf if you're driving or you're riding your bike or whatever. It's a big part of life.
It is. You mentioned earlier the way I sometimes talk about collecting mothers, and that's definitely true. I grew up mostly in a single-parent household, and my mom worked, 2 or 3 or more jobs to make ends meet, and so I found myself with lots of alone time. It wasn't necessarily in a bad way, but I would end up adopting families, and one of the most influential was Linda Murphy, and Amy, her daughter, was my best friend through my teens, and Linda always had surf films playing in the background of life, music and surf films, just all through the day. A lot of the time they'd be silenced, but I'm sure Jack's films would have been playing as the background to my young grommethood.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I actually was gifted Bunyip Dreaming in 1992 by my middle oldest sister, Tonchi. Tone gave that to me for Christmas, and I don't know how long it lasted because I just played and rewound that VHS a million times and could still recite the whole film word for word right now if I had to. And that was Jack's creative handiwork. He created a feeling, a real feeling from staring at a little square box, and if I was going to spend time staring at a screen, then, I wouldn't mind staring at Jack's footage and listening to the music that he chooses, because he can really weave a good dream and create some beautiful moments. And I think the surfing organism is richer for his contributions, which are many and vast. And there are many surfers who've had the real good fortune to have collaborated with Jack and had a surfing career from that. And I was certainly one of those lucky young fools that lucked into a project with Jack that helped me still steer clear of a 9-to-5 job and a desk position somewhere.
I was quick to note the lack of diversity in some of Jack's work, notably the lack of women surfing in his films. But you mentioned that he was also really cognizant of including Indigenous representation and art and
in Bunyip Dreaming and a lot of the other Billabong pieces that Jack put together in the 90s and early 2000s included Indigenous surfers, specifically Andrew Ferguson, and also art and music, a lot of Yothu Yindi in there, and all with these sort of subliminal messages in the films of taking care of the ocean and the coast, and even putting on in some of the bonus sequences after all the credits on one of his surf films was a Planet Ark piece, which was a long sort of monologue from this environmental group that was all really impactful for young teenage minds, soaking up all of it and wanting to know what this thing is that we're growing into and becoming a part of, this surfing world.
It's so interesting that perspective wasn't necessarily coming from Australian-born filmmakers, but it took someone from, who was raised in the culture of a thriving Indigenous population in Hawaii to come and draw the parallels here in Australia.
Yeah, I really feel that surfing has a lot to thank Jack for, and that it's not even finished yet. He's still in there cutting and splicing and mixing up different edits with Paul McCartney music and Craig Anderson surfing and Belinda surfing and when we were there with him, he was still fizzing to show us a new edit of his, which is something he's always done since I've known him anyway. And that's just wonderful. Wouldn't it be great for us all to be that animated and lit up by something for so long, and to have such a deep love that you can, maintain, sustain that love through thick and thin, through decades, and through the thing itself changing so much from when he learnt to body surf and surf in Hawaii and still is head over heels for it and loves to see someone with style and loves to see a beautiful surfing moment and to share it with people. That's a very rich, deep love.
I turned 72 last birthday, which was in July. And another one coming up here real soon. Boy, life speeds up as you start getting older, that's so true. When you're 5 years old and you're waiting for Christmas for the next one, it seems like forever to come around. But when you're 72, Christmas coming around like, didn't we just have Christmas? You're just going, that went quick, Well, I tell people I'm, 18 years old with 52 years worth of experience. So that's how old I am.
The first thing, Jack, that's what Lauren and I have been talking about when we've been talking about being able to come and sit with you and share with other people through this medium is your thirst, but that you've sustained that. And you joke about being an 18-year-old with 52 years of experience, but your curiosity is still filled with awe and wonder and energy. Now, where has it come from and how have you sustained it?
Well, let's put it this way. 7 years ago, I went out for a body surf and I got really dizzy and I thought I was going to pass out. I was out the back. It was like a 5-foot day at Palm Beach. It was kind of big and I didn't know if I was going to be able to get back to the beach. I had to do everything I could not to pass out. I was so short of breath. And when I got to the beach, I just landed face first in the sand. And a doctor friend of mine comes up and goes, "What's the matter?" I said, "I can't believe it. I'm just out of breath. I don't know what's going on." So that alerted me to go check on what's going on with my heart and stuff. I'm 65, I'm fit, I'm still swimming in the pit at Chopo on a 10-foot day with a 30-pound camera. Nothing the matter with me, and I've got an underwater jet ski, and I'd be doing this. I mean, my big thing was to keep shooting water shots past Bud Brown. He stopped shooting at 62. So when I turned 62 and I was still going, I was just going, I'm going to break a record for the next kid down the track. I'm going for 72, or something. So anyway, I was just really, you don't think about your mortality. I didn't, no, people do think about their mortality. I'm just speaking for myself. But I wasn't thinking about it. It wasn't something I had on the radar. And so after 6 months of tests, I'd get a specialist who does all the things. He says, you have this IPF disease. It's very aggressive. We don't know where you got it, how you got it. There's nothing to fix it. Go home, get your affairs in order. You'll be dead in a year. And, It was like, oh my God, what do you... So I went home, and for 3 weeks I moped around and, started making a bucket list and poor me and all this. And then I went, wait a minute, what am I doing? What am I doing? Stuff those guys. What? He wants me to set my clock for a year and just fall over? That's what he was, telling me was going to happen. And I got angry. Why didn't he say, there's nothing you can do? And just like has happened in my life all the time, people come in and out of my life at times when they're supposed to. And I called a friend in America and asked him if I'd come stay with him because I wanted to go do this little project thing I was doing. Can I stay with him? He goes, yeah. And then the project thing fell through. And I called him, told him I wasn't coming. And he said, okay, so how you been anyway? And I said, well, I've got this disease. And he goes, well, get over here. I'll help you. This guy had a very unique way of working on people. And he worked on me doing very mysterious things, like not your normal sort of thing. And he put me on a gut health trip. And I also learned about keeping the garbage bin clean. And I brought that information back to my wife, who studied it. And she and my daughter began to get into this journey as well, looking after me through colon hydrotherapy. And here I am now, 7 years later. I still get short of breath, but I've never felt better. And so every day I got to stay stoked and keep thrilled and enjoy. I mean, I got so much more to do. About a little more over a year ago, I got pneumonia. And I went in, my friend who was the emergency room doctor said, oh, shit. He took an x-ray and he sent me straight to ICU. He came and saw me the next morning. He goes, I just want to let you know that if you have something to do next week, you should do it because I give you a 15-20% chance of getting out of here with the infection you have. And I just laid there and I went, fuck that. I'm going to put the overalls on again and I'm going to just climb that hill and I'm going to get through this. I'm not ready to die. You mean 20% in a week I'm dead? Wait a minute. I haven't seen my grandson yet, And so I got through it. And I was very fortunate. And that's why when COVID came around, I, took extra precautions to self-isolate and not wore the mask and sanitize the hands. And I had the gloves on when I put the petrol in. And I'm still doing a bit of that stuff because I can't afford really to get it. And did that answer your question?
Well,
Not
it does.
really.
It does for the recent history in the recent time, which is really important. But the years and the untold amount of adventures and challenges and big scale projects and deep relationships and wild times and firsts, all of those things that are in the Jack McCoy archive of an incredible body of work, which people all see through your film work. But for me, having an inside perspective with you through our times and experiences together, I see that that thing we were talking about before, that thirst, that chi that you have, that mana, all of those words to describe that animating force in you is so strong, and it has carried you through so much for a long period of time, and the boldness to do such big, amazing things, like big, amazing projects that have meant...
A lot of people go, God, that guy is one, I know they called Fred Hemme Dead Ahead Fred. Well, some people call me Dead Ahead Jack because really during my career, one, you didn't really want to share too much information with your competitors. So I would kind of keep a little bit of a distance. But even when people would come up to talk to me or, whatever, I wasn't rude. I was just not there. I was busy thinking about what I was doing, and and that's what I had. I had this vision, and I was going to fulfill it. The thing for me is that when I first started making movies, I realized that I was going to be able to communicate with a large audience of sharing the stoke that Bruce Brown instilled in me when I was a kid. When I went to my first Bruce Brown movie at like 13 or 14, my dad took me to my intermediate school that was also a high school. And Bruce and his wife were there at a little card table selling tickets. The door to the auditorium was closed. It was a cafeteria, really. And they're selling the tickets, and they were milling around. And about 10 minutes before the show, Bruce got up and he opened the doors. And he said, okay, he'd rip your ticket because there was a number on both sides of the ticket. And they rip it in half and they give that to you. Then they threw the other half into a hat and pulled out lucky door prize at the end of the night or at intermission. And so, okay, well, that's pretty cool. So we all usher in there, and we're all sitting there, and you go, oh, there's a couple more people just coming. We'll start in a minute. It's like 1:15, and we're all getting a bit antsy already. The natives are getting restless. And he walks up, and he gets the microphone, and he goes, hi, I'm Bruce Brown. Thanks for coming to see my movie. And this is like his first surf movie, that he's taken around on tour, surfing holidays. And in the first half, we're going to see California and Mexico. And then the second half, we're going to be in Hawaii. But I'll have to change reels. So we'll go through the first half. So just give me a minute and we'll get the show running. Put the mic down. He'd run to the back of the auditorium. He'd turn on the projector. No, turn at the lights. Turn on the projector. You'd all sit there, 8, 7. He'd run up. He'd sit down, pick up the mic again. He had a reel-to-reel tape recorder because they didn't have the sound on the actual film, the optical sound, which came a bit later. And he had to play the film in sync with this reel-to-reel tape. And he started it right when he wanted to, and he personally narrated the movie. And then I was right down the front, and I watched him speed it up a couple of times to kind of catch up to a certain... He knew the movie and where the sound was supposed to be, but they didn't run perfect sync. And sometimes he'd stop it and wait for it to catch up to a thing, and then he'd start it again. And a couple of times I saw him hold his finger on it to slow it down, and I'm just tripping. But the thing was that he was funny, and he was engaging, and he was taking me where in film of what I'd been looking at in Surfer Magazine. Up until then, all I'd seen was Surfer Magazine. And now I'm in Mexico. Jesus, and the donkeys and the mud and the journey down there and the corny things that they did. And then first half ends, intermission. He runs up the back, turns on the lights. I watched him. What you did was you take the reel off the back, put it on the front, and then you'd rewind that onto the other one so it's ready to go again. Then he'd put the second roll up on the front, thread it up, get ready. And then he'd come out and he started talking to us again, to everybody, It's like a 15, 20-minute intermission. Then he says, okay, everybody, get on. We're going to give away some door prizes. And tonight we have this really bitchin' Hobie t-shirt. Whoopee! Oh, yay! Okay, our next prize is 2 bars of paraffin wax. Yay, everyone. I mean, that's how simple it was. And then we saw Hawaii, and it did the same thing. Wrap the back, start, project, came back. And then at the end of the movie, everybody kind of files out, but a few of his friends and I made my dad stay, and we helped him clean up the place. That was part of the deal. He could rent it, but it had to be left the same for the next day. You know, it had to be, so we helped him clean up, and they close the door, lock up, and they all walk out to the car park. And my dad's going, come on, let's go. I'm going, I'm following him. Are you kidding? Leave me alone. We're going, listen to, Bruce is still talking, you know? Mm-hmm. And I got home that night, I'm laying in bed, and I just went, that's the most incredible experience I've had in ages, you know? And years later, I figured out what it was here was a guy who was taking surfing to other people and sharing the stoke of surfing in the way that he knew how to. And that made a big impression upon me. In high school, I started being Greg McGillivray, Bruce Brown, and Bud Brown, everybody's poster kid. So I'd, get free tickets, and I'd put up the posters in our town. And then after high school, Randy and I started to show McGillivray Freeman films in Hawaii. They trusted us to everybody's movies. And then when I came to Australia, I got a job with Paul Widzig and Peter Troy showing surfing films around Australia. And in 1975, I made my first surf movie. So I just took this inspiration and stoke from those that came before me. And Bruce Brown had a big impact on me. Greg McGillivray and Jim Freeman had an amazing impact on me. They were the guys who really, Jim Freeman was just such a beautiful guy, and he was always excited about something, And I learned a lot from him I said to Jim at one stage, I said, so when I was going to start to make my first movie, I said, what's the best advice you can give me? He says, the best thing you can do is get all the people who you're working with to feel as if they're a part of your production. Let them know what you're doing and how you're doing it, and be interested in the things that they're doing to help you. Now, years later, I would go to the lab, this place called CFI. It was the largest, processing lab of the films. And I'd go in and I'd meet the guy there. And he said, what do you do? I said, I make surf movies. First thing he'd say is, do you know Jim Freeman? Yeah. Oh, God, we love Jim. He was so cool. He would come in here and he would watch the technicians work and ask questions, and he'd sleep on the floor to wake up so he could get the result and go back to Laguna, didn't have to drive back up from Laguna. And that made a big impression upon me to involve and enroll the people. And to this day, I'm still working with a lot of the people that I started with. I took that advice and you always put their name in the credits. Credits don't cost you anything. And when the janitor sees his name in the credits, boy, oh boy, he gets in there and opens the door to your dunny for you, No, I'm only joking. But the point is that you develop this relationship. I do this now in Maxville. My son can't stand me. I talk to everybody. Hey, how you going? Aloha, But it's because it's not what people do these days. I don't think they do it that much anyway. I'm unusual. Everybody in Maxville knows me. There's a couple that know me and don't like me. That's perfect. Got to have a couple of bloody tall poppies there. But the rest of them think I'm pretty groovy.
What does aloha mean to you?
Well, just what it means. I grew up in Hawaii. It's the ha is the breath of life. It's the essence of everything. What do they say when someone gets resuscitated? He gave them the kiss of life. It's the breath of life. He brought that person back to life with his resuscitation. Well, Brian Kealana's lineage comes from the Maori, so his grandmother used to come up to him and put her forehead on his nose, forehead to forehead and nose to nose. Share that breath, and which is still, Maori, tradition. The greatest gift you can do with anyone is give them a breath. Without that breath, man, nothing the matter with breathing until you can't get one. And you've been there like me, where you're down there and underneath and you can't get one. You start talking to God and you go, I'll be good. I'll go to Sunday school for the rest of my life. If you let me up here, Lord, can you give me a hand here? And you realize how fortunate we are, with these breaths. And that's what I've tried to carry through. As far as my enthusiasm and stoke, every day was an adventure for me. I love making movies. I love it. You were with me. How obsessed and mad was I? To the point of they're going, get me away from this guy. He's just too much. I remember the Chile trip, It was like...
I was actually telling Lauren when we were cruising down the coast about it, about a moment where it was the first time I got to go away with you, and Vinnie Lauder was with us, and we were going down the south coast. And so this was whenever it was, late 90s or something, early 2000 maybe or something. Anyway.
Late 90s.
Yeah. So you were scouting for one of the Billabong Challenge projects, and Vince, I guess, looped me in to surf some waves and be with you. And I couldn't believe that I was just in a car with you and Vince and listening to all this amazing music, which I was already quite fond of, and we were having great yarns and stuff. And then we get to a surf spot there and we paddle out, and I'm like, oh man, I can't believe Jack McCoy is on the beach with his camera and I'm surfing, and he's maybe going to shoot some shots of me. I better surf good. Like, I was really had this big story in my head because I grew up watching Bunyip Dreaming and all your other films of that period were just huge for me. So big story in my head, paddle out, I get this wave, I do a couple little wiggles, and I'm like, oh, that was pretty good. I think I surfed that wave really well, actually. I bet you Jack got a really good shot. And I look to the beach, and I'm like, he's just like going to have his lens still on me probably, and I sort of peer over my shoulder. I didn't want to be too cocky or anything. I look over my shoulder, and you're in a squat, a deep squat, and you've got the camera up against your eye, and you're filming a bird on the shoreline, and you're tracing this little bird as it walks along the shoreline. And I looked, I'm like, he didn't even film me. I went, that's fucking awesome. That's actually really good. It takes the pressure off. And what it actually meant to me, though, was growing up with Dick Van Stralen at Burley Heads, always giving me a clip around the ears saying, look at the birds, look at the fish, look at the light in the clouds. See, look at the trees on the headland moving like that. Look at the patterns in the sand. He was always schooling me to see the bigger picture as often as possible and appreciate all the colours, all the shapes, all the things that are happening in the surfing experience. And in that moment where I saw you filming that bird and not me, I saw the same thing. I was like, no, of course he's not going to be filming. If there's this beautiful bird along the shore, look at Jack. His eyes are wide open to all of it as well. And so it was just this, it was a great moment for me. It was a tiny moment. I never told you about it, but it was a real indicator for me. I was like, yeah, okay, this is what is this how the elders in surfing, is this how the uncles and the older crew are? Is this what I should follow? Is this how I should carry myself through a surfing life, is looking at the birds, is appreciating them, having that enthusiasm.
What I'm feeling is that what you're getting from your two elders is that the experience of surfing, the appreciation of a surfing life has only a little bit to do with the actual standing up on waves. It's so much more than that. Is that something that you learned in Hawaii to start?
Well, I mean, the fact is, you know, a good ride is on an average about 10 seconds. So you get up in the morning and you get yourself ready, you load your car and you make sure you got the right board, and there's a whole thought process of what's going on about this surf. And then you get down there, you got to drive and you got to put this stuff on, and then you got to walk out to the and jump off the rock, and then you got to sit there and wait for a wave. And a wave comes and you ride it, and there's 10 seconds. And then you go back and you sit and wait for another one. And the act of surfing that we do in relation to what we do to surf is not, it's just, the scales are just ridiculously tipped in the other direction, right? Yeah. And so that's why, for me, to preserve those moments as souvenirs of your life. When I shot a great shot of you, I was so thrilled, because when we started working together, I knew from the moment that I met you and started working and traveling with you that this was someone that I wanted to share everything I had with. You know, we're driving down the coast. He goes, I got this new album. Oh, God, I've been listening to this guy. Here, put that cassette in. Yeah, back in the cassette days. Put this cassette in. Have you ever heard of Leonard Cohen? Right. But who told you about Leonard Cohen? Oh, DVS told me about him. Oh, God, he's my new favorite. Have you heard him? You were so excited to share with me something like Leonard Cohen. And then years later, I had the honor to hand you 2 third-row tickets to Leonard Cohen's last concerts. Mm-hmm. You know, and those are the things in my life that I've been able to pass. Things happen, you know, that just, for whatever reason, it's just the way it is. And as far as the aloha concerned, I got that from Duke, I'm sure, as I thought back later, the first time I met him, and he shook my hand and he looked down at me and went, aloha, are you a surfer? I go, yes, Mr. Kahanamoku. You know, well, good. Surfing's been good to me, and keep surfing, and aloha to you. This is behind my dad's stage. My dad had a TV show in Hawaii, and the Duke was on this one Saturday. So I went. He introduced me to Duke, and my dad introduces me. Duke, this is my son, Jack Jr. Oh, Dad, I hate being called Jack Jr. Hello, and so I met him. And then as he walked out, he turned and he gave me a little wink, you know? And then he went on stage and did his thing. I didn't see him again. 5 years later, I'm at this department store where they're having a promotion for Duke Kahanamoku Sportswear, and he's there with his whole team. Paul Stroud, Fred Hemmings, Joey Cabell, and Butch Van Aertsdalen. And I go down the line, you get a picture signed by each guy. I go up to the Duke, and the Duke looks up at me and he goes, oh, Jack Jr. He remembered me. And he signed my picture to Jack Jr., Aloha Duke. Stuck it in my shirt. I don't want my friends to see Jack Jr. Today, that's my greatest possession in the whole world, you know. But at that point, when he shook my hand, is when I believed that he transferred the spirit of aloha into me. I hadn't picked that up until much later in life. And the next person who really brought it out and brought it into focus for me was Rell Sunn, who she was a very dear friend of mine, and their whole family were. And about the 10 or 12 years before she passed, she became the embodiment of Duke Kahanamoku reincarnated, with the way she behaved, the way she shared, the love that she gave. You know, she started that Minahuni contest. It's the biggest contest in Hawaii now for kids, you know. And among other things, you know, she was just an angel, Rell Sunn. Her whole family were. And it gave me an example of how I could be, of living aloha. And then, you know, I'd go to the Duke Fest every year and I'd get a little bit more aloha, but it wasn't until I started A Deeper Shade of Blue about, God, what is it, 9 years ago, that I was really studying the Duke and what was going on, that I got the responsibility. Jack, you're sharing the Stoke. You have to share Duke's message. You have to take this to the next level. You now have a bigger audience at your disposal. Not my disposal. I have a bigger audience. That's the wrong word, disposal. You know, I've got people who love my films, and they, you know, I have people come up to me, and just the other day, I forget who it was, but some young guy came up and said, "Oh man, you know, your movies made me want to go traveling. I can't thank you," you know. That's the greatest reward. You know, I've made a decent living out of surfing, but I haven't gotten rich like a lot of people did back in the day. But I wasn't trying to get rich. My riches come from people like that kid who just told me I'm touched, moved, and inspired him. Man, I'm the richest guy in the world when that sort of stuff happens.
Sorry to interrupt the conversation, but we wanted to take a moment to recognize the generous folks who have supported us this season. 2 billion people around the world live without access to a toilet. That means lots of people head to their local beach or riverbank to do their business, which, when you're talking about 2 billion poos or more a day, doesn't make for healthy waterways or communities.
My explorations in activism over the years made me feel like I had to be either leading campaigns or taking part in radical initiatives of some sort to be doing something in the world. Though now, especially at this time where many of us are staying home and localising, it feels really important to look at our daily decisions, and you don't get more daily than making a dirt. And that's where Who Gives a Crap comes in. They are a B Corp that believes that access to a toilet is a basic human right, and they donate 50% of profits to providing proper sanitation to those in need. And that, to me, feels like a great form of everyday activism.
27,000 trees are cut down every day to make toilet paper. We support Who Gives a Crap because they make toilet paper from recycled textbooks or bamboo and plastic-free packaging, so we all have a better option than chopping down trees to wipe our bums. We can all make a difference with as little as our toilet paper budget. Head to whogivesacrap.org and use the coupon code WATERPeople to get $10 off your first subscription. That's $10 off your first subscription purchase at whogivesacrap.org with coupon code WATERPeople.
Thanks to Gary McNeil Concepts, who put together cosmic boards for cosmic people. Gaz's boards combine recycled and plant-based materials that are built to last without sacrificing performance. To learn more, head to GaryMcNeilConcepts.com.
The Water People podcast is brought to you by the fine folks at Sanuk. In 1997, founder Jeff Kelly started out with one simple goal: to make people smile, and to encourage them to pass it on. Sanuk has been advocating for a more playful and inclusive surfing culture for more than 2 decades, while crafting some of the comfiest footwear around. Thanks, Sanuk, for your support and for encouraging water people around the globe to protect their happy places. Learn more about Sanuk's partnership with the Surfrider Foundation at sanuk.com.
I also was hoping that we would be able to dive into a backstory or two. And the one I have in mind, which is one that I've learnt a lot from, is when we were in Tahiti and we were shooting for Blue Horizon, and I can't remember if it was the trip where you got slammed on the reef and your helmet was cracked and the part of your helmet cut you right on the neck there and you got gnarly staph, and I remember pulling out the stitches out of your neck, and it was one of the most gnarly things I've ever seen. But you kept swimming and shooting, even though you had this cut to your jugular basically. And we had this great, awesome adventure, big.
That's one of those experiences of how full-on Jack McCoy is about making movies.
Yeah, that's
and how
it.
Focused he is.
100%.
Oh my God.
Little small smash on the reef, no problem. When do we get? Oh, let's start shooting.
Yeah, there's good wind, good waves. We're back out there, pretty much. It was high intensity, and then there was a down day, and on that down day, we were milling around at Mummies and Puppies there near the channel at that amazing wave, and you came up with the idea of just going for a cruise. Let's go for a cruise around the island. And you had mentioned that your amazing partner, Kelly, had been telling you about following your heart and just going with your gut and your heart in different ways. And I just remember we jumped in the car and you said, all right, let's just start rolling. And when we feel the inspiration or the urge to turn right, woof, we'll turn right, or woof, we'll go left, and we'll just see where we end up. And we ended up on exactly the other side of the island. And I don't know how much you remember of that experience.
Are you kidding?
But I was hoping you would be able to.
I'm wondering if you can remember that experience, because right now you kind of got it wrong.
Good.
Here we go.
This is what I was hoping for.
We go to Tahiti to start Blue Horizon. You and I get there a week before everybody else.
Great. This is exactly what I was hoping would happen.
you and I were hanging out, and I told you, nothing was going on. I said, let's just go for a drive. I put my cameras in the car. I always loved, on down days, I could always find something to shoot. They say never drive with a cameraman because he's always looking for a next shot, So anyway, I was telling him about how my wife said, just follow your heart, whatever comes in your things. So we drive from Chopu and we get to this juncture of the isthmus, the point of the isthmus. So we can go left into Tahiti. We can go right and keep going straight and go around the backside of the island, or we could go right and then right again and go around the other side of Tahiti Iki. And that's what we chose to do. We decided we'd just go around that little thing. And then we end up at the end of this road at this amazing bay. We drive over this bridge, we go over out to the point, and we get out. It's a big, long black sand beach. It looks like something out of the movies, Jurassic Park or Hawaii, the movie. The big mountains in the back, the valley, the trees, the river coming out into the ocean. And we're just tripping. It's so beautiful. I say, let's go for a cruise and go back to where that bridge is. I saw a road going up parallel to the river. Let's go up. So we go up, and we go to the end of this road. And there's like this little shack sort of house. We get out and we go down to the river and we go in and we go for a swim. And I get my we're just both kind of in awe of all this. This was like being immersed in the deepest heart of Tahiti's nature. That's how I would consider Tautera Valley. It was like we're at the heart. And we later found out that this particular bay was where King Kamehameha sailed and came to visit King Hira, who also sailed to Honolulu. but he lived there in this valley. So this particular valley has this incredible connection with Hawaii. And for some reason, no, it's not for some reason, by what was meant to be, I ended up here in this valley, and I'm with Dave, and he's getting the same feelings I'm getting. And that's what really excited me about the journey we were just about to start, because I knew he was with me. You know, he was in sync with me with what was going on. So I start to interview him, and it's just dead calm and still. And we were just talking about certain things. He said, well, you know, I feel like this person could be here with me right now. And just then, a gust of wind comes down the valley. Like, do you remember that? Mm. I'm interviewing you, and you said, you know, the person, it could be, you know, I feel that person's with me. And as if on cue,
that's right, I've forgotten about that.
That person blew a breath that went down the valley, and we picked it up, and it's on the mic. I've got it. You know, it's like, and we both kind of looked back and went, ooh, spooky, you know. Anyway, we then go back up to the house, and turns out that there's another house that we can't see that turns out to be the brother of the guy whose house that we were parked in front of. He comes out, and we write this, you know, we're just so tripping. And in broken English, he said, you have to come back and meet my brother. And I'm not sure if we wrote something down or if Tunui did actually come out that first day.
I feel like he came out that first day.
He might have come out that first day. So he took us down to go meet Tunui. And he was this handsome, how old? 60?
Yeah.
You know, 60-year-old, but, you know, chiseled, fit, beautiful, and beautiful mane of gray hair. You know, he was just like, and he welcomed us with open arms. And to make a long story short, Dave and I had a long conversation and spent a lot of energy with him, and we went back. A couple of weeks later, we took Andy with us, and we all sat around in their little garage, outdoor patio area, and you played the didge, and they played the nose flute, but he was descendant from King Hira, this guy. Yeah. But it was like this meant to be lesson in the heartbeat of Tahiti for me. That was one of the most, how could I ever forget that? That was one of the most, and I still miss, you know, there's a lot of people in my life who I wish I'd been able to stay in touch with, but obviously you can't all the time. But when I went back to Tahiti, I would go back and I'd go see Tunui and his family. It was a real cosmic trip, man.
Well, I'm glad that you remember the specifics of it, Jack, because I obviously didn't remember the specifics. But for me, the main part for me is that feeling of following that heart feeling, and that experience was really profound for me, and something that I've really felt just rise up in me all the time. It's not like I have to think about it and laboriously make that happen. It's just like, whoa, that wave just comes up and it's there. So
for those that don't know, that's the sound of the very rare and unique blowfly from this valley, who's just come in to say
joining us.
Hello.
Cameo.
And he just went right by the microphone. That's not cosmic. I don't know what is. Was that meant to be?
That's the version of the wind in the valley in Tahiti.
Thanks to Jack for having us at his place to talk story. And special thanks always to our sound engineer, Shannon Soul Carroll. On behalf of myself, Lauren Hill, and my partner in rhyme, Dave Rastovich, thanks for making the time to listen with us today. If you have a spare moment, please consider leaving a review of the podcast or sharing an episode with a friend. Both help us to find the best stories from our global community of water people. We'll be continuing today's conversation on Instagram, where we're at Water People Podcast. You can find every episode and some extras on our website, waterpeoplepodcast.com.